Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Appointment with Death, starring Peter Ustinov, Lauren Bacall, Carrie Fisher, John Gielgud, or Good, excuse me for that, Piper Laurie, Haley Mills, Jenny Seagrove, David Soul, and Nicholas Guest, directed by Michael Winner. Now, before I get into this review, I must say, I had a hard time finding this movie on streaming these days. But I caught up with Tubi recently and I watched this movie. And yes, I reviewed the previous movies, including the Kenneth Branagh stuff as well as the original stuff. Now, and you can look at it from, I want to say, while I was waiting up for Death on the Nile to come out. It was around 2020 to 2021. I forget what time that was, but I have, but now I'm seeing this movie, and let's get into this review, and you'll see what I think of it. In New Jersey, USA, in the year 1937, at the Boynton residence, Emily Boynton, played by Piper Laurie, makes a new will from her late dead husband and brings her and her children Lennox, played by Nicholas Guest, Raymond, Carol, Ginevra, as they're left under her care as one of the daughter-in-laws, Nadine, played by Carrie Fisher, who's married to Lennox, as these characters feel trapped under her hand, like she won't let them leave her house, and as she's been to prison before, and they make a trip together. And out of any of these characters, Emily comes off the most unlikable, as she was unlikable in the 1976 film Carrie, which I reviewed before. And she's even more unlikable here than in Carrie, as she's completely abusive towards them. Dr. Sarah King, played by Jenny Seagrove, tried to help Emily, but instead she calls Nadine to help. And because she's a doctor, I didn't get why she called for someone like a doctor instead of Nadine, because she's not a doctor. Meanwhile, the lawyer Jefferson Cope, played by David Soul, comes in for Nadine, as does Detective Hercule Poirot, returned by Peter Ustinov. While he's on vacation, and we also meet Lady Westholm, played by Lauren Bacall, who is arguing with everybody, and Emily orders Ginevra to go to bed early, and everything feels like it's about Emily, as this character annoys me the most, but I like the rest of the characters more than Emily herself, as she really got on my nerves after a while. They go onto the same ship as Dr. King as well as Poirot, as it so happens they're friends, while Raymond getting to know Dr. King as he meets Poirot as they go on a cruise, and Jefferson is told by Emily to stay away from her family, as he feels bad because he's done the wrong things for Emily, and she invites him to join them for dinner, while Poirot overhears Raymond and Ginevra. And this thing is shot so poorly. The acting is terrible, as the writing is super obvious. Meanwhile, Jefferson comes to the table and almost has a poisoned drink, but Lennox comes in as he almost drinks it, and he punches Jefferson for having an affair with Nadine, who happens to be his wife. While Poirot happens to see a couple of cockroaches getting killed by a poison on the drink, and to be honest, that scene could have been cut out of the movie. As they arrive in a foreign country, Poirot and Dr. King meet with Colonel Carberry, played by John Gielgud. I don't know if I said that wrong, please forgive me. And they drive to a castle hotel, and the land felt like it was a green screen, which is a real shame because I'm almost 30 minutes into the movie. I kind of want to get to the point of the movie, as it's a murder mystery, and it's taken too long to get there. Dr. King gets a message from Carol, as it was given to Raymond, as he wanted to show up, but his mother forced him in, as she's a monster that focuses too much on her. As Poirot witnesses Emily being the monster, as she's telling him not to see Dr. King, and they go in the middle of the desert with Lady Westholm, as a lady named Miss Quinton, played by Haley Mills, goes missing, as she shows up riding a camel. And I'm getting bored at this point, as this movie is taking way too long to get to the point of the movie. Poirot takes off while Emily suggests everyone to go on a walk, and Ginevra, in which she orders her to go to sleep as she's very tired, and Lennox, while on the walk, goes back and Raymond kisses Dr. King, and Poirot gets back when Dr. King goes back to camp, and Emily is killed, and good riddance, because I don't care how she gets it. She was getting on my last nerve, and at this point, I don't care how this movie ends at this point, as it is a slog to get through. Poirot, as at first believes Dr. King as a suspect, and she looked resistant, and this is the Hercule Poirot I remember following in the previous movies, as this isn't making much sense. Poirot gets to a meeting with Lady Westholm, and he believes she's a suspect. And she believes she's not without proving anything whatsoever, as she lies with Ginevra, which doesn't sound believable, and the acting in this is not believable, as they leave quickly, and Lady Westholm bumps Poirot's foot on purpose, which I can't believe in this bad script. Poirot has a word with Lennox without Nadine at first, as Lennox is led to believe he's gone too far with the investigation, and he talks with Nadine, and she says she doesn't regret Emily's death, and she was telling him what happened to her, and I'm getting tired of this movie at this point. Jefferson takes a walk and talks with Poirot about what happened to Emily, as he tells him he's not a murderer. And what is this movie about? Boredom? Because that's how I feel of this movie. Poirot talks with Carol as Raymond overhears the conversation, and they didn't get to the plan they were going to do with killing Emily, as they talked about it, but they didn't do it anyways, as he's not comfortable talking any further as we move on to the nighttime, and hears a voice that tells him to meet him at 10 a.m. while he shows Miss Quinton a spider that we learn later in the movie that he made up. And everybody tries to avoid Poirot, as he asks Colonel Carberry to set everybody up at a dramatic location to find out who the murderer is, and Poussin runs away from Poirot and Dr. King after seeing them together, and she chases him, Dr. King, I mean, and he shoots himself looking at Dr. King, like Dr. King did it, as Colonel Carberry stops the muggers from killing Dr. King, as she was arrested by the Jerusalem police and put her in jail briefly because Poirot releases her, and I didn't care for the chase scene, and this movie is quite exhausting at this point. Poirot tries to reveal who the murderer is as Raymond confesses his idea, which is from a detective magazine, and Lennox is asked why did he kill her when he knew it wasn't him to begin with, and Lady Westholm interrupts the investigation, and they all go in with her, including Colonel Carberry and Poirot, to a dance, as Poirot gets some information who did the murder, and they get to the dance, and after the dance, Poirot explains Lady Westholm did the murder, as she did it, and that's when he reveals the spider was fake, and Lady Westholm meets with Poirot, as Lady Westholm committed suicide, as she doesn't want to go to prison, and now everybody can go home, and Dr. King goes with Raymond to America, and I can move on with my life, as this climax left me cold. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 2.5 out of 10. The movie was way too focused on Emily on the first half of it, as it took too long to get to the point as she's a terrible character. But I didn't like any of the... Well, okay, I'll like some of the characters, but not all of them, as they felt stale, and the acting is terrible, the shots are horrible, and this thing is unfortunately shot so poorly, like the country therein looked green, like a green screen. The murder mystery was super quick, as the first half took way too long to get to the point of it, as it was getting to the point I didn't care how this movie ended, as it was a slog to get through. I was bored for most of it, and when it becomes a murder mystery, it kicked into gear, but not to the point I would recommend this movie. And unfortunately, this is a solid non-recommendation for this movie for me because it was a complete slog to get through this entire movie, as this isn't the Hercule Poirot I remember following from the previous movies, and this jumped the shark completely. So yeah, solid non-recommendation. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and I will be back with A Haunting in Venice a few episodes away. And yes, I reviewed Murder on the Orient Express original remake, and same with Death on the Nile and the other ones. And until then, this case is solved.